Judge Eleanor Price prided herself on efficiency. Her courtroom ran like clockwork. No nonsense, no delays, no mercy for defendants who wasted her time. On a humid morning in Chicago, she expected business as usual. Another open and shut case. Another young man accused of something he probably did. The defendant, 21-year-old Marcus Reed, stood quietly at the defense table. His hands clasped behind his back, shoulders squared, eyes fixed forward. He wasn't slouched, he wasn't jittery, and he wasn't smirking. He looked ready. That alone unsettled some people in the gallery. Marcus had been charged with armed robbery and assault. The accusation was severe, that he held up a corner store at gunpoint and injured the clerk during the struggle. The prosecutor, Samuel Green, looked almost bored as he organized his files. To him, the case was already won. The surveillance video was grainy but clear enough, and the clerk had identified Marcus in a photo lineup. What more was there to discuss? Judge Price adjusted her glasses and nodded at the prosecutor. "Go ahead, counselor." Green rose with theatrical ease. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the state will prove beyond any doubt that Marcus Reed walked into West Side Market with a loaded firearm, stole $400 from the register, and assaulted the clerk in the process. The clerk himself will testify to this, and surveillance footage, though not perfect, places him at the scene. We also recovered clothing from Mr. Reed's apartment that matches the suspect seen in the video." He glanced at Marcus, lips curled in quiet satisfaction. "The evidence speaks loudly. The only question is whether you'll listen." The jury shifted uneasily, and the gallery murmured. It sounded bad, very bad. Judge Price gave a small nod. "Defense?" Marcus's public defender, a thin man who looked overworked and underprepared, rose awkwardly, but Marcus placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. In a calm voice that carried farther than anyone expected, he said, "Your Honor, with respect, I'll be representing myself." The courtroom froze. Judge Price arched an eyebrow. "You'll what?" "I'll defend myself," Marcus repeated, voice steady, eyes sharp. A wave of whispers swept through the gallery. The prosecutor smirked. "This should be entertaining," he muttered under his breath. But Marcus wasn't trying to entertain. He had spent years studying trial transcripts, poring over case law, and shadowing his older sister, a law student who had drilled him endlessly. He hadn't expected to use that knowledge to save his own skin, but now everything depended on it. He walked to the center of the courtroom, hands clasped loosely behind his back. "Your Honor, before we waste everyone's time, I'd like to clarify something about this so-called video evidence." Green leaned against the prosecution table, smug. "By all means." Marcus gestured toward the screen where the blurry footage played. A hooded figure stormed into the store, waved a pistol, then shoved the clerk. The figure's face was hidden in shadow. "The prosecution wants you to believe this is me, but notice something." Marcus paused the footage, pointing at the man's left hand. "The robber holds the weapon with his left. I'm right-handed." He turned to the jury, holding his hand up. "I've never fired with my left in my life. Ask any coach I've had." The state didn't even bother to check. A few jurors exchanged glances. Judge Price frowned. Green cleared his throat quickly. "Handedness is irrelevant. The video shows clothing consistent with what was found in his apartment." Marcus smiled faintly. "About that, those clothes, they weren't found by following proper procedure. No warrant, no written consent, nothing but an illegal search. The Fourth Amendment exists for a reason, and I intend to use it." Judge Price stiffened. "Is that true, counselor?" she asked Green. "The officers entered the premises after breaking my lock, with no warrant. That's not evidence, that's trespassing." The gallery erupted with murmurs. Judge Price rapped her gavel. "Order." But her eyes lingered on Marcus, impressed despite herself. Still, the prosecution pressed on. "Your Honor, even if we set aside the clothing, the victim himself identified the defendant." Marcus turned, locking eyes with the jurors again. "Let's talk about that. The clerk was assaulted.
His face was slammed against the counter. He admitted he was dizzy, disoriented, and scared. Yet we're supposed to believe his split-second glance at a masked man is flawless identification? Studies show eyewitness testimony is wrong more often than it's right. And the police lineup? My photo was the only one with a beard. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Even the jury sat up straighter. Marcus stepped closer to the prosecution table. You want to know what real evidence looks like? Let's check the timestamps. At the exact moment this robbery took place, 8:47 p.m., I was on a city bus 2 miles away. And unlike their so-called evidence, I can prove it. From his folder, he pulled a printout. Transit records. My bus card was scanned at 8:46, boarding the number 22 line. Surveillance from the bus shows me sitting in the 3rd row. Clear as day. The courtroom erupted. Green stammered, red creeping up his neck. Your Honor, this can't... But Marcus wasn't finished. And one more thing. The real robber, he left fingerprints on the store's glass door. The state ran them. They didn't match mine. And yet here I am. For the first time, Green had no words. Judge Price leaned back slowly, her expression unreadable. Silence stretched, until finally she spoke. The court has seen enough. Case dismissed. Chaos followed. The gallery erupted, reporters scribbling furiously. Green slumped in his seat, defeated. Marcus stood quietly, shoulders steady, face calm. He had walked into that courtroom a defendant and walked out something else entirely. Outside, cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but Marcus ignored them. His sister waited at the steps, tears in her eyes. You actually did it, she whispered, pulling him into a hug. Across the street, Judge Price stood at the courthouse doors, watching him leave. Her face, usually hard as stone, carried something softer now. Respect. Because Marcus hadn't just defended himself. He'd forced the system to look in the mirror. And for once, it blinked. The lesson? Too many lives are decided by shortcuts, sloppy work, or bias in the courtroom. Marcus had the knowledge to fight back. Most people don't. This wasn't just about his freedom. It was about every case like his, past and future. He knew this wasn't the last courtroom he'd stand in, but next time, he wouldn't be fighting for himself. He'd be fighting for others. Because Marcus Reed wasn't just a defendant. He was a lawyer in the making. So remember this. Justice doesn't serve itself. It has to be demanded. And sometimes, all it takes is one person brave enough to stand up and say, "Not this time."